Welcome to an afternoon with Rick Hansen. I'm Jenny Ellison, Curator of Sport and Leisure at the Canadian Museum of History. Today I'm joining you from my home rather than our spectacular museum on the banks of the Ottawa River. These are obviously difficult times for the world, and while so many public institutions remain closed, including the museum, we remain committed to staying connected with you. That's why we've asked Rick Hansen to join us and you here today. We'll talk about Rick's career as an athlete and activist and share news of an exciting project we've been working on together. This event is part of a series of initiatives we're undertaking to build our sport collection and to bring you closer to Canada's most dynamic and contemporary sport personalities. For many Canadians, Rick Hansen needs no introduction. His Man in Motion World Tour, which took him through 34 countries between 1985 and 1987, remains an unparalleled athletic achievement. Since then, he's continued his work to build disability inclusion in Canada, and we'll discuss that too. If you have questions or comments during the program, please share them on Facebook or YouTube. At the end of the program, we'll answer as many as we can in the time we have available. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our guest of honor, Rick Hansen, to join me on screen.
Hi, Jenny.
Hey, welcome, Rick. How are you doing?
Oh, great to see you. And yeah, doing wonderful. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for you very much. So I'm going to jump right into it. We're here today to talk about and mark the anniversary of the Man in Motion World Tour, which started 35 years ago. And before we get into talking about the event itself, I'm just wondering if you can tell us what inspired you to undertake such an initiative when you were already an Olympian and a Paralympian, and you'd won the Lou Marsh Trophy for Canada's most notable athlete of the year.
Well, you know, it was really the experience of dealing with my injury and having to come to terms with seeing ability, not just disability, and knowing that life could still continue, that I was an athlete and that Paralympic sport existed. And then representing my country around the world in wheelchair marathoning and track had a huge and profound impact on me. I felt, one, incredibly grateful for those who helped put me in that position. And secondly, I had these deep experiences of facing attitudinal and physical barriers everywhere in my own mind as I grew and learned about my new reality, and also from society. And a lot of my colleagues shared the same story no matter where I went around the world, and I was compelled to be able to do my part to pay it forward. I mean, we learn that in sport and in life, that no one gets anywhere on their own, and we should make a difference wherever we can. So I decided to put my athletic talent as a wheelchair marathoner together and try to do something that would change attitudes and hopefully make the world more accessible and inclusive. And then decided also that we would try to help find a cure for paralysis sometime in the future for the next generation.
And you know, it was such a remarkable impact and drew a lot of attention to your sport and your work that otherwise, you know, Canadians weren't familiar with. I myself, my memory of the tour is of watching you whiz by in London, Ontario, and I know many Canadians share the same memories. In those moments when you're going by the crowds, I'm just wondering, you know, we remember seeing you go by. What were you thinking and feeling?
You know, the first thing is that I'm really every stroke thinking about the next push, the next pothole on the road, and just stay in the moment. And then I'm also looking and searching for anyone who really takes time out of their lives to be part of the journey, to show them with just a glance or a smile or a wave or a nod that I care, and that I'm super grateful that they've connected and responded. And then the response, you know, going through countries like China, where for the first time someone with a disability was actually showing ability and that they could contribute to society and to the world. It was a real privilege to experience that moment.
Cool. So another perspective on the tour that I've learned, I've been studying the tour recently, and that's of the work of the volunteers that you were with you. You know, that what enabled you to have that focus is that you had a team of people who were with you. So I invite you, as well as our viewers, to see a video from Nancy Thompson, who was with you for the entire duration of the tour, and she'll talk a bit about her experience and her view. So let's take a look.
I knew Rick before the start of the Man in Motion World Tour when I was working at Sport BC. I was involved with the tour from the very early days. First day of the tour was very exciting, but logistically the things didn't go quite as well as planned, and so I ended up staying overnight, and then that turned into another night and another night and another night, and through that I've also developed a very strong friendship with Rick as well. China was an integral part of the tour for a couple of reasons. It was the country where we started to receive more international publicity about the tour and just created that excitement and momentum that started to grow for the rest of the tour. Rick had a personal goal of wheeling on the Great Wall of China, and so that was a major accomplishment for him personally. Rick was given a decorative plate. It was a special gift from the Deputy Governor of Jinan, and it was presented at a formal event on April 18th. For me, it's really about the people that we met on the tour, the personal time and energy that they put into helping Rick and the rest of us get around the world. It was amazing.
Thanks, Nancy, for that testimonial. And Rick, you know, knowing that Nancy is still in your life, you must have formed a lot of lasting relationships through the tour.
Nancy was an unbelievable champion, and without Nancy, Amanda, Tim, Don, Lee, Mike, all of the amazing folks who came not only on the road, but obviously those who were back home in Vancouver and in Canada and around the world, giving up their time. It was a phenomenal experience, one that we'll never forget. And really, I feel so grateful to actually have gotten to know them under these really exceptional conditions, and to know that we all brought our talent, and somehow miraculously we actually made the dream come true.
All right. Well, sorry for the pun, but I want to switch gears and to share a video from Mark O'Neill, the President and CEO of the Canadian Museum of History, who's going to share news of the project that we've been working on together.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Rick and Amanda. On behalf of the Canadian Museum of History, I'm so pleased to join you for this special occasion. 35 years ago, I was amongst the countless Canadians who watched as Rick Hansen set off on his Man in Motion World Tour. And to think that this journey took you across 40,000 kilometers in 34 countries in 26 months. En cours de route, il a souligné la nécessité de sensibiliser le public au potentiel des personnes handicapées et de financer la recherche. Son important travail se poursuit encore aujourd'hui grâce à la Fondation Rick Hansen. Il est juste de dire que Rick Hansen a vraiment changé le monde. Today I'm delighted to announce that Rick has donated his entire Man in Motion World Tour collection of over 1,700 artifacts, an exceptionally rich collection of archival documents to the museum. These artifacts range from the first wheelchair he used on the tour to the gold record earned by the popular song St. Elmo's Fire, written in honor of the tour. These and many other pieces speak to the outpouring of support and enthusiasm for his work from people across the country and around the world. Cette collection montre comment la tournée mondiale raconte non seulement son histoire, mais aussi celle des bénévoles, des représentants du gouvernement et des membres du public à travers le monde qui ont soutenu sa tournée, ce faisant contribuer à l'évolution des droits de la personne au Canada. On this 33rd anniversary of the end of the Man in Motion World Tour, I'd like to thank Rick for so generously donating this incredibly rich collection to the museum. The story of the Man in Motion World Tour and everything that has stemmed from it will now be safeguarded as a part of Canada's incredibly rich and diverse history. Grâce à ce don au musée, les histoires et les objets seront sauvegardés pour les générations futures. I look forward to seeing you, Rick, and to learning how your important work continues. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup et félicitations.
Thanks, Mark. So Rick, we've been working together on this for a couple of years. How are you feeling now that the news is public?
What an incredible moment. And, I just first of all want to thank you, Mark, and the entire team from the Museum of History. And it's a tremendous honor and privilege that you have decided to be able to take all the artifacts, that represent so much of the hard work of so many of us pursuing a dream, and to know that it will be permanently part of Canadian history as hopefully a source of inspiration to keep the dream alive and to continue to pursue the vision of an accessible and inclusive world for people with disabilities and a cure for paralysis.
Thanks. Well, we're so delighted and excited to have the collection. And I should mention as well that the Canadian Cultural Property Export Review Board recently certified this as a collection of national significance because of its close association with national life. So this is a huge honor for this collection to really recognize how integral it is to the Canadian story. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to dig into your perspective on the collection and learn a little bit more about your personal connection to the artifacts. Are there any that stand out for you that really will help us and Canadians tell your story?
Jenny, I think the most significant one for me, given my close, intimate contact with my wheelchair, is really what it represents. First of all, people actually worked hard at building a number of wheelchairs, specifically built everything from, the everyday kind of road conditions to the mountains to the winter and the four-wheel drive nature of a chair to keep going in the ice and snow. And also it represents, my means of transportation. And I used to see that wheelchair as a symbol of disability, and now I see it truly as really my symbol of ability and to be able to get back in motion. And all the hard work, every contact, 17 million touches of the wheel to be able to complete that journey, one stroke at a time. And all the people who gave their time on our team to be able to keep that whole program going, to adjust the chair, to maintain it. And, I'd be in the motorhome resting and they were out there just giving it. And it's really quite amazing to see that chair. It brings back a lot of emotion. And also I can look at it now and I go, wow, times have really changed since then too. That's held together with duct tape and a whole bunch of crazy things.
Well, we're going to keep the duct tape on that, right? Because it's part of the story. It's one of the things that makes it so unique. I was in the building the day we moved the collection from British Columbia to the museum in Gatineau, Quebec, and there were actually, it might interest the public to know that there were actually a few pieces that we took from your personal office that you've been keeping pretty close at hand all these years. One of those is a statuette of Terry Fox. I'm wondering if you can share the story about that object.
Well, that statue has really powerful significance to me personally. Obviously Terry was a great friend of mine, and I recruited him after he lost his leg to cancer when he was still struggling with that new reality, and brought him out to the Vancouver Cable Cars wheelchair basketball team. We became great friends. We trained together, roomed together, and shared hopes and dreams together. I know he inspired me in a big way. And when we left on the Man of Motion tour, his mom and dad, Terry's mom and dad, Betty and Rolly, actually, and Daryl and the family came out to wish me well. And they presented me with a miniature maquette of the statue of Terry at Thunder Bay. And wow, it was such a powerful source of inspiration to me. I had it in the motorhome right beside me when I'd come in for a break every single day. And I'd look up at it and it would just speak to me. And Terry would speak to me like, just keep going, man. You can do it. Don't give up. Dreams come true. Have hope. And it was definitely a magic moment. So super grateful to Terry and obviously to the Fox family and that statue and that maquette. That's the most special part of the entire collection from my perspective.
Cool. That's cool. So we have a video from Daryl Fox sending you greetings and also to tell us a little bit more of that story. So let's watch that now.
I've known Rick for quite some time. Go back to the late 70s, and I would consider Rick a friend. He's been a friend of the family ever since he first made that call to Terry in 1977. The artifact that was given to Rick, a mini statue of the monument in Thunder Bay, and it was given to Rick on the day that he started his tour. I was there. Obviously, Mom and Dad were there, and Mom was the one who presented it to Rick, and had a lot of symbolism because I think it reflected the friendship, the strong friendship that Rick and Terry had. And here I had an opportunity to see Terry's very good friend fulfilling his dream. And I'll never forget the emotion that came over me. I think Rick has been an incredible inspiration to so many people. It just mirrors what Terry has accomplished and the influence that Terry continues to have. Thank you again for being such a good friend to the Terry Fox family. We think this is the right move for you to hand off and share the collection with the Museum of History so they in turn can share it with people worldwide.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. Rick, in Daryl's video, there's some video and photos of you wheeling by the actual statue in Thunder Bay. What was that day like?
Oh, that was incredibly emotional. I struggled hard to keep that a private moment because it's such a personal story for me. And you know, he was a great friend, and you know, that was in many ways a tragic moment when Terry was forced to abandon his journey, and for all of us losing him so early, great loss for the country, the family, friends. But also, who would have imagined, you know, that this young man gave everything to make a difference for others, and by trying, look what's happened. You know, here it is, the 40th anniversary of Terry's Marathon of Hope right now, and Daryl and the family and so many Canadians and people around the world have kept his dream alive and have accomplished far more than Terry could have ever imagined. And, you know, I hope that, you know, when people see that, they see a little bit of Terry in them, you know, because they all face challenges. We all have hopes and dreams, and we all can make a difference. And we should keep Terry's dream alive and get out there and support the Fox Foundation and cure cancer. And what a great legacy that would be for Terry. But either way, I just think people, you know, really can have hope and can make a difference in whatever they care about.
Absolutely. I always think it's, you know, it's the story of two everyday people who decided to, you know, follow their dreams and undertake something that perhaps at the time felt like it was, you know, impossible or unachievable, and just do it. And that of course you're heroes, but you're also real people, right, and who did real things through initiative and teamwork. So
yeah, well, you never know until you face a challenge what's inside, and we also know that we're never alone. There's always someone there to inspire, encourage, and support us, and just keep struggling, because just around the corner, through hope, there's possibility.
Absolutely, absolutely. These are great stories, Rick. I do want to move on a little and just talk to you about the public response to the tour, because one of the things we get in this collection is, of course, material about you, but also huge wealth of material that was given to you by members of the public, who will be happy to know that you preserve this material over the decades. And we have handmade objects and drawings you receive from people. We have pins, button, badges, just all sorts of really cool material that helps us to tell this story and really see the public response to the tour. And so I asked you what you were thinking during the tour as you were wheeling, but you also met members of the public, just frequent encounters every day on the tour. What did you take away from these moments of exchange?
You know, that was really why I decided to wheel around the world, was to try to connect with people and cause people to think and to perhaps, you know, internalize their attitudes, perspective, and encourage them to make a difference. And the way that they responded was so unique and personal. I mean, little teddy bears from young kids, or piggy banks, or pennies, or, you know, it was just unbelievable, the kind of generosity and response. So the first thing that I was thinking was just pure gratitude that people would take time out of their busy schedules to converge and to, you know, to give us these wonderful mementos that were symbolic of their love and encouragement and support. The other thing that I took out of it was a real sense of inspiration, because I realized that I was actually making a difference, and I wasn't alone, that I had all these amazing people behind me, and it really gave me a sense of encouragement that could continue and complete my journey. I could find the strength from that. And then lastly, it was probably the most powerful thing that I got out of this, Jenny, was that really there is hope for humanity, and there's so much goodness in human beings, so much more than the other side. And sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that, but I experienced it, and it has forever changed me, and I'll never lose that hope.
Thanks. That's a great response, and it was a joy as we were working through the collection, and I looked at every single pin and drawing, and to really feel that too, and it gives you this sense of optimism that we can always use more of these days.
Well, when people come together, anything's possible.
Absolutely. Mark in his video mentioned the gold record for St. Elmo's Fire, Man in Motion. I have to admit that's one of my favorite ways to understand the legacy of this tour, is that there was this enormous hit song that was on the charts while you were on the road. So I'm thrilled to say that John Parr is here by video, and he's going to tell a little bit of the story of the song.
David Foster, great Canadian record producer, called me and said he was doing a movie called St. Elmo's Fire, and would I be interested in writing a song with him for the movie. And he said a young man came passing through the studio a couple of weeks ago. He'd broken his back a couple of years back, and he was determined to make wheelchairs a thing of the past, something you'd see in a museum. And he said, I'm going to wheel this wheelchair around the world, and I'm going to make people take notice. I'm going to raise money and awareness for spinal research. And as they pulled out of the parking lot, the side of the van said Man in Motion. And the hairs on the back of my neck went up. I went back to the hotel that night and I wrote Rick's story. Rick once sent me a telegram. He said, but when I feel I can't wheel another mile, I pull over and I play the song, and then I get rolling again and do another 20 miles. Even though it's 35 years ago, we've inspired each other. Rick's story is timeless, and this song is timeless with it. It's the soundtrack of the dream. And that dream continues, and I believe, like Rick believes, that one day that chair's going to be in the museum.
So great. Okay, so great. I love that song so much. Rick, when did you first realize it was a hit?
You know, when I stopped on the way down through California in the early part of my Man in Motion tour, and thanks to my good friend, you know, Terry David Mulligan, who connected our notion of the tour with David, and he was producing a soundtrack for the movie St. Elmo's Fire. He said, you know, Rick, I'm really inspired, and you know, we're going to come up with something. And how would I have known that he and John would come up with this song that not only would be really kind of cool and symbolic of our entire journey, but it would start to capture momentum. And I first heard it on the radio in the early days in Texas, and then when I arrived in Europe, it was on the top of the charts. And I'll never forget our actual organizing committee in Portugal. They had this loudspeaker, and for the entire journey, every day through Portugal, they just played this song in a constant loop everywhere we went. And then when we got to New Zealand and took a break during Christmas, we were at an evening dinner, and the radio was playing in the restaurant, and the DJ said, you know, this is a #1 hit, and here it is, you know, Man in Motion. And it was just super inspirational for us. It was a dream that we had before we started the tour. Most people thought it was crazy. We'd never be able to get you know, a theme song that would become popular, and yet somehow it happened thanks to people just giving it a shot. Thanks to David, thanks to John.
Right on, absolutely. So I want to ask you, I want to switch gears again a little bit and ask you about the physical strength required to finish the tour. So I've asked you about the crowds and the mental strength. I know from our work together that you finished the tour injury-free, and a lot of the reason for that is the work of your physiotherapist, Amanda. Many Canadians may remember, and many Canadians celebrated when the two of you became engaged in the course of the tour. So I want to invite Amanda now to join us on screen.
Excellent.
There you go.
Tucked into that corner there, waiting for us.
Hi, Jenny.
Great to see you.
The key to the success of the tour. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put her on the spot a bit here, Rick, because I have interviewed Amanda a few times before, and I was going through my notes, and I noticed that one of the first things she said to me about you was that you were very young, very enthusiastic, and very stubborn. So, Amanda, I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your first impression.
Yeah, I think I did use those words. I mean, give it some context. I met him in, I guess, April of 1984, so a year before the tour. And he had dislocated his shoulder, test driving a new wheelchair the day that he was supposed to get on a plane to go to the Boston Marathon. And so he ended up coming into the rehab center where I was working, and I got him as a client. And he just wheeled into the treatment room and stared. I knew who he was because he'd been doing a lot of wheelchair marathoning and competing, and he was a bit of a legend in the world that I was working in, which was spinal cord rehab. And so he comes through the door. He had a bust up nose, and he had stitches, and he had his arm in a sling. And he said, yeah, well, I've got a timeline. I need to get ready for the Paralympics that summer and the exhibition 800 meter race in the LA Olympics in '84. So that was, and we had 3-4 months, and he had nerve damage. It was a fairly serious injury. So I knew right away I had my hands full.
Well, when I met her first, I went, oh my God, thank you for this injury. It's my lucky day.
but seriously though, it was a bit intimidating. I was a young therapist. I had really only gotten started in my career, and I was pretty by the book. There was no book on a wheelchair athlete, needing a 4-month run up to a competition after dislocating his shoulder. So we worked together, and he was stubborn because he wouldn't let up on his goal. And then as we were maybe about 2 weeks into therapy, he said, oh, and by the way, I'm planning to wheel around the world next year. So I really need to be in great shape for that. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what have we got ourselves into here? So, he's a complicated guy in some respects, but in other ways, pretty straightforward. He sets his mind to something, and it's going to happen. And for me, it was exciting because it was pushing me out of my comfort zone, out of the box, and produced good results. He got to those Paralympics. He won his medals. He got to the exhibition race in the LA Olympics, which is a huge deal for all of us in that world of disabled sport at the time. So that was kind of my intro to him, and I knew what I was working with.
Well, you believed in me when most people had written me off for those games, and got me back together again.
It strikes me just listening to the two of you talk as I've, again, been studying the tour, I really started to think of it not just as a Rick story or a team story, but a story of a partnership. And I love hearing Amanda talk about the events.
Yeah.
I wanted to invite you, Amanda, to talk a little bit about what that looks like in the day-to-day of the tour. So a couple of weeks after the tour started, you joined Rick. How did you shape the logistics and operation of the tour?
Well, I think the big challenge was, I never doubted that he would do it, but it had never been done before. There were no books and manuals as to how to manage a body wheeling that far on a consecutive daily basis. And he got injured right out the gates. Second day in, he phoned me. I wasn't originally going to be on the tour. I'd set things up so that he could link up with physios along the road if he had problems. I had a manual set up for the crew to ice him, to do all these things. And he called me and said, I'm in trouble.
My crew was, teasing me that I was faking the injury just to get Amanda out of it.
So I took an early holiday from work and went down to assess the situation, and we quickly realized that I needed to be there. And fortunately, that was a point in time in my life where I was able to go back, and my boss was very kind and said, take your leave of absence. And I thought I was going just for a short while. It ended up to be 2 years and 2 months and 2 days, but who was counting? And as soon as I think the big issue was if he was injured right away at the beginning, we had to get on top of that. We had to now get that to settle down and to start to anticipate the obstacles ahead and what the challenges were going to be. It took a while, but probably one of the biggest impacts for the tour and for Rick was we started to have an advanced recce done where someone went ahead and actually took track of the slope of the road. We had an altimeter so we could actually find out what the altitude change was, even the slope on the side of the road where he would be mostly wheeling, the length of the hills. And with that information, then they recorded it into a tape recorder. It was transcribed and sent back to me by paper. And then I took those recordings and maps, and I was able to figure out what we needed to shift in his wheelchair to prevent overuse, to allow him to maximize his ability to push. And it was a long, hard slog. There were injuries that popped up all along the way, and it was always problem solving, thinking outside of the box. The crew sometimes would curse me because I'd say, okay, now you need to move the chair into this position. You got to change the rims, and we could do it on the fly in the middle of a day as well. So it became very sophisticated. And I truly believe that, and being a little smarter about rest days and how long they were, all contributed to him coming home injury-free, which for me was, I was just that over the moon about that single accomplishment in itself.
All in the day of non-digital era, where everything was by smoke signals, carrier pigeons, and what is it, the great innovation called telex and fax.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have the paper to show it. I mean, there's the looking through those documents. It tells a story in itself for sure. Thanks, Amanda, for joining us. I hope you'll stick around for the questions and the rest of the program. Thank you.
Well, I just want to conclude also by saying, Jenny, that Amanda's role on this entire tour journey was critical. Not just in terms of the incredible work that she did as a physiotherapist to make it possible for me not to self-destruct and get through it, but as a key leader. To step up and help with the dynamics and be a real friend and an advisor and someone who would provide tough love back, when you're filled with pain and frustration about, the difference between the dream and the reality of the day, and still trying to keep it in perspective and make good choices. I truly believe that if Amanda wasn't there, I would have made so many different choices because I would have been isolated and I would have regretted a lot of those choices. But I really feel that I got that perspective, and I'm super grateful for your leadership, Amanda. And again, the entire team stepped up and played a role with their strengths, and your strengths shine.
Well, we were such a family on that road. Yeah, we really, depended on each other heavily, and that isn't always easy when you're living in a motorhome together. Yeah, and at that age, the young age is in the mid-20s.
That's absolutely true. I wonder, Amanda, if you something that you mentioned to me once was how excited everyone was when they got new clothes on the road. Can you just tell that story?
Oh, yeah, no, we would. It was. I mean, because we didn't have a big wardrobe, and laundry had to be done very frequently, and things wore out. So Nike was a sponsor, and every few months we would get a package, and back then it was very on trend, so we were so excited. We would scrabble through it all and pull out our new gear, and it was wonderful.
Well, and that was an example as well. We talk about the the direct crew, but the kind of levels of support from corporations like Nike or McDonald's or service groups like Kinsman, the various sport organizations that represented athletes with disabilities from around the world, the Canadian Foreign Service. It just goes on and on and on how people and organizations came together to be able to make that happen. And then, of course, when you think about it, coming back through Ottawa, the Prime Minister Mulroney and the Government of Canada, mayors, it just premiers, it just continued to unfold in a way that was unexpected and made us feel super proud, to be Canadian and know that everybody seemed to come together to help us get to that goal.
That was a perfect segue, actually, because I do have a final video that I'd like to introduce, and it's from the Honorable Carla Qualtrough, the Federal Minister of Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion, and she's wants to share a message with you as well. So let's take a look.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor today to extend my warmest wishes and congratulate Rick Hansen on the 33rd anniversary of his Man in Motion World Tour. Rick is an outstanding Canadian whose dream is to create a world without barriers for persons with disabilities. It's an honor to call Rick my friend and mentor, and to have worked together for so long to pursue our mutual passion for disability inclusion. Rick's tour brought the world's attention to disability inclusion and raised awareness about the valuable contributions of persons with disabilities in our communities. Over the years, we've made great strides in making Canada a more accessible and inclusive country where everyone belongs. As our government addresses the COVID-19 pandemic and puts in place important supports for Canadians, we are focused on helping persons with disabilities maintain their health, safety, and dignity during these difficult times and beyond. I hope that all of you are keeping safe and staying healthy at home. I'm thrilled that Rick Hansen's legacy will live on at the Museum of History with his artifacts from his Man in Motion tour. Thank you to the museum for giving Canadians and tourists for generations to come the opportunity to learn more about accessibility and inclusion through Rick's remarkable journey. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you, Minister Qualtrough. So Rick, first of all, it must be great to hear someone describe you as a mentor and an inspiration. What a great testament to the legacy of the tour. But Minister Qualtrough also mentioned COVID and just the ongoing work to promote inclusion in these challenging times. I wonder how your experience as an athlete and activist helps you to think about this moment.
Yeah, I believe that, as an athlete, and of course in my experiences as a leader on the tour, and seeing what happens during challenging times personally, I've come to realize that in those lessons comes hope during this period for all Canadians. I know what happens when we come together. I know the strength of the country. I know that we can actually overcome any challenge if we're kind and supportive and we care about each other. And so this is our time to shine. And it's really important that we continue to show that and to express it as we face probably one of the greatest challenges of our young country. There's a lot of disruption and tragedy and fear and uncertainty, and yet in that is great love and compassion and great values and people who are doing so many amazing things that I hear about every single day. And through that comes the hope that we will emerge through it, not only be able to thrive, but we'll be able to be better for it. And we have to, because it's our responsibility to make this challenge, this pain, this suffering count for something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, it all speaks to me. I wonder if you want to take a minute and you could just share some of the ongoing work of the foundation to sort of meet those challenges now and just as we move into the future.
What an honor to have Minister Qualtrough actually provide that tribute and that recognition. She's the reason why I feel so optimistic for the future. We've come a long way in all these years since the Man in Motion tour on those two big dreams. But largely it's because people picked up the challenge and they've interpreted it in their own way. Minister Qualtrough was a young athlete when I met her, aspiring, just to get into university, and she became a top lawyer and an advocate, a champion, and now an elected official who drove the leadership commitment of the government of Canada to introduce the Canadians with disabilities legislation, the Accessibility Canada's Act. And so as a result of this legislation is going to normalize and embed over time the fact that people with disabilities are equal, that all the unintended barriers and consequences and policies that have been architected into our society inadvertently can get blown down and replaced with new enabling policies, and people with disabilities can go anywhere and to be anything they want to, and show ability and participate, but also contribute to our society, and we're stronger because of it. And I just think that progress is so hopeful. And Canada is a young country making this, I would say, a leadership mark on our cultural identity, and it's embedded in our Constitution, which was brought home, in the early 80s, and that people with disabilities were equal. And what a powerful statement. And as we reflect that, and as we knock down barriers every single day, then we also recognize that a young country like ours can actually lead and learn from a global society. And the dream of the Man in Motion Tour, of an accessible and inclusive world where people with disabilities can achieve their full potential, has never been more possible. And I'm just so grateful that this artifact legacy in the Canadian Museum of History is actually going to not just be there to promote a moment in time, but it actually is a symbol and an encouragement for all Canadians to pick up the mantle and keep moving forward with the minister, with the government, and we all share a responsibility to do our part.
Absolutely. For the museum, I think it's really important to have the collection to enable us to tell these stories and make sure it's documented as part of the history of Canada, and that future generations understand that this didn't just happen on its own, but it takes a commitment by individuals as well as society to make the change. So I think, just super thrilled about this collection. We are getting some questions coming in through social media, so I'm going to turn to those now and answer a few. The first one, Rick, is for you, just to ask, who were your sporting heroes growing up?
Yeah, well, there's no question one of my great sporting heroes was Bobby Orr, and I remember skipping out of school, to watch some of the great, NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, and what an incredible athlete. He overcame a lot of adversity with injuries, and still excelled and accomplished so many things. And we had the privilege to be able to meet Bobby, Amanda and I, when we were coming back up the eastern seaboard of the United States in Boston. And he was kind enough to take time and encourage us. And
I was a thrill.
Yeah, wasn't it awesome?
My goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gave me one of his jerseys, and I believe that's also one of the artifacts that you guys will have, and so huge inspiration. And I wore that jersey going into Parry Sound, his hometown, and that was super special. Obviously, having a chance to be able to meet Wayne Gretzky, and Wayne and I got to know each other with Wayne and Mark Messier and Paul Coffey and the Oilers when Terry Fox and I were playing wheelchair basketball in Edmonton, and we were out there, and they came out to get in the chairs, and we had exhibition games against them. We kind of kicked their butt back then, but but anyway, it was great to see, because he does so much for charity. He's done so much, with his stardom, and showed a lot of class, and it was involved in our World Cup in Halifax in wheelchair basketball. On the tour, he really helped a lot, by being able to generate more awareness through hockey games in the NHL, where we stopped at various cities on the home stretch. And he's been involved in David Foster's foundation and to help him as well, and he helps so many others. So those are great examples of Canadian icons who are athletes, but then they also pay it forward, and had a big impact on me.
Great. Okay. Actually, I love all these sport questions. We also have a question of your favorite or the most inspiring contemporary athlete.
Oh, contemporary athletes. There's so many unbelievable champions, but as far as athletic accomplishment, you got to look at someone like Michael Jordan. The guy, unbelievable. Just tremendous talent, just at that upper level. When you look at people who have made a difference, although he's recently passed, I believe that Muhammad Ali was was phenomenal because of his stand on, again, on values and principles. He did, I think, more outside of the ring, especially as he dealt with Parkinson's, and he really showed class and dignity as he lost a lot of his physical abilities. Because sometimes athletes, we get so identified with our physical prowess, and that if that's taken away, it can eat at the core of your self-esteem. And yet he turned that completely around and really paid it forward. And I had a chance to meet him at one of David's events, and it was a true inspiration.
Okay, I've got a few more. I'm going to pull rank though and give one or ask a question as the MC for Amanda. While you were speaking, we showed some B-roll of the tour logs that you donated to the museum. They're one of the real treasures of the collection, and I just wondered if you could share with our audience the story of the tour logs that you kept.
When I sort of mentioned, because I kept them at home, and I'd mentioned them to you at one point, and you said, "Oh, we would love those," and I'm going, "Ooh, I'm not sure I want to hand those over," because I'm so attached to them. I mean, my whole life was just thrown into those. It recorded everything, and they were very, very special. And it's funny, it took me a long time to actually go back and look at them again, because I found it so overwhelming to actually go through every day and realize that this extraordinary accomplishment happened one day at a time. So they're pretty special to me, and I handed them over to you.
Yeah, it really is a legacy for the incredible hard work that you've done, keeping me patched up.
Yeah. Yeah, I should mention, I'll put up a link at the end, but we have photos of many of the artifacts we're talking about today, so people can go and take a closer look. Last question I'll take from YouTube. And the question is, has Rick made it to Hansen Township north of Killarney, Ontario, that was renamed for him in 1986?
So, sorry, that question was again?
Oh, sorry, have you ever been to Hansen Township in Ontario that was named after you during the course of the tour?
Oh, the township?
Yeah.
I haven't, and as a matter of fact, that was an incredible honor, and it's one of my bucket lists. I really do want to go there and see it. It's got so much wilderness and natural beauty, and I've heard about it, and definitely it's on my list.
Great, and I'll just give one more plug to the collection to say it is part of the collection, and it is now preserved at the Canadian Museum of History, the certificate for that renaming. So I know what our viewer is referencing there. There are a few more questions, but I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. To learn more about the collection, I want to invite our audience to go to the Rick Hansen Man in Motion World Tour page at the Canadian Museum of History's Museum at Home site. You can see, as I mentioned, photos of the collection and also see some of the video that we captured today. If you have photos or stories, Rick would love to hear from you. The Rick Hansen Foundation also has a page where you can go and share your memories of the tour. And of course, we're happy to hear them on social media too. On behalf of the Canadian Museum of History, I want to thank you, Rick and Amanda, for being here today. And thank you for sharing the Man in Motion World Tour collection with all Canadians and allowing us to keep it for future generations. And lastly, I want to thank the Canadian Museum of History staff and the Rick Hansen Foundation staff who put this program together from their homes. And of course, thank you to our audience for joining us today and for your questions. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, Jenny, and thanks to all the Museum of History staff. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good afternoon and a weekend.